in order to get into that place of really vulnerable, honest relationships. And I would say that's probably been the most transformative for me and our family, because the more I get into that place of sharing and being real and raw and honest, the more I'm able to build more authentic relationships.
I have a special thank you just for you, our podcast listener. Right now, you can get free access to our most popular course and masterclass, How to Prepare, Support, and Respond to Your Child During Shots, Blood Draws, and Vaccines. You can also get access to how to use comfort positioning in pediatrics. These courses usually sell together for over $250, but we're giving it away to you for free. All you have to do is leave a written review for this podcast, Child Life on Call, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Give us a quick screenshot of your submitted review to podcast@childlifeoncall.com. Once we get your email, we'll send you the course completely for free. There are no strings attached, just our way of saying thank you for supporting the show and helping more parents find our podcast. Send us a screenshot of your review to podcast@childlifeoncall.com. That's PODCAST @childlifeoncall.com. Can't wait to get you free access to this course. Hello, my friends. My name is Katie Taylor. I am a certified child life specialist, and I'm so happy to be with you. Today, I get to introduce you to the amazing woman who you've just heard. Her name is Erin Trier. She is a mom of 4, and they live in Park City, Utah. Her son was diagnosed with Tuberous Sclerosis Complex just a year ago after a many-year journey to find a diagnosis. She'll get into the ins and outs of her stories, but Erin and I get pretty deep into the day-to-day life and strategies she uses having a child with multiple complex disorders, in addition to being a mom of 4. We literally even talk about laundry, and I'm not kidding you. This is going to be something that helps you so much, so I definitely want you to listen. Erin comes with an amazing mindset, not only because she's a coach, but because she understands that being vulnerable and sharing openly and honestly about what she's going through only leads to deeper connections and more support and help in her life. So whether or not your child has the exact medical diagnosis, I know you're going to be doing a lot of head nods as you listen to Erin's story. Thanks so much for being here. Erin, tell me a little bit about you and your family and where you come from, and mostly about you, Erin.
Katie, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me here on the podcast. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to share our family story, share a little bit about me, share about what I'm passionate about, and just connect with other women in the podcasting space, in the health and wellness space, women who are serving inside of, helping families who are navigating disorders, disabilities, et cetera. And it gives me great joy to be able to be here. So I can't thank you enough for having me and for the opportunity. So a quick background on me. My name is Erin Trier. I'm a mom of 4. I'm married to my husband, Dave. We live out in Park City, Utah. We've been here about 8 years. We moved from the Midwest, grew up in the Midwest, born and raised, both of us. We met at college in the Midwest and kind of made our way out to the mountains and have never looked back. It's been such a gift for our family to be out here. And we've been out here, like I said, for almost 8 years. And during that time frame was when a lot of what we had started to slowly uncover for our son's health, that's when that happened. So the first glimpse into a lot of what we started to manage as a family happened right before my son's 2nd birthday. And he all of a sudden out of nowhere started having seizures, which felt very jarring, very hard, very confusing. There was no real path to that specific symptom. And so it kind of really popped up out of nowhere, which was very scary for us. Yeah. And so we did all the things with trying to uncover where that was coming from. So we landed in the hospital right after Christmas. We did a 24-hour EEG at the time. We had a lot of really great support from child life specialists at the hospital. That was kind of our first glimpse into child life specialist work and getting supported and having resources and, having someone to talk to with how do you entertain a 2-year-old in a hospital for over 24 hours.
We could probably have a whole episode on a 24-hour EEG.
Yes. And it was just such an interesting time for my husband and I because it came out of nowhere. It all of a sudden landed us into the hospital with our almost 2-year-old. And we just had no idea what to expect. And so that was the first glimpse into this very slow unpacking of what we've worked into over time with our son's diagnosis. So at that season, we went through all of the different things to kind of dive deeper on what was causing the seizures. And the initial kind of diagnosis, if you will, or explanation was that they were sort of something that maybe just was, a toddler thing or an infant stage thing, and something that he would essentially grow out of. There was no real indication of anything more than that. We went through additional testing like CT scans of the kidneys, went through an MRI for his brain, all of those things to kind of see what else was going on. And they did see some, what they thought at the time were birthmarks or kind of lesions in the brain, but that could have led to seizure activity, but nothing that they could determine as a definitive diagnosis at the time. So we kind of were sent on our way. He never showed any sign of seizures kind of after that point. We went on meds for a year, tapered off, and we just never really saw seizures again after that first initial bout right before his second birthday. And then right before he turned 3, that's when we made the move across the country. And so we moved out to Utah for my husband's job, away from family, and kind of restarted as a family. And there was a 6-year period where we were starting to see more on the behavioral and emotional side for my son, but not a lot necessarily physically, right? We didn't see anything additionally physically. And as we were unpacking those things, we went through a variety of interventions, lots of therapies, lots of, early intervention, PT, OT, and just trying to kind of find ways to support him with the mental and emotional side and the behavioral side of just some of the hurdles we were starting to see as he grew older and as he was getting into school and as he was working to navigate social dynamics, et cetera. And then on the morning of his 8th birthday, he had another round of seizures. And I will never forget it. I vividly remember him waking up that morning. I went in to wake him up out of his room, and he sat up and immediately seized and fell out of his bed, turned blue. We had to call EMS, all the things. And it was really scary for us because, again, it felt very jarring, kind of out of nowhere. We thought that ship had sailed, And
also just the emotional heightened of it being a birthday.
Yeah.
Adds an element of like complete shock.
Complete shock, right? So it was like we had this wonderful, joyous day the night before, and then 8 a.m. the next morning. It wasn't even 8 a.m. It was more like 6:45 a.m. Like it was this totally different feeling, very catastrophic, very jarring. So it landed us in the ER that morning, and we had talked about his history of seizures in the past with the medics and things like that at that time, but we still didn't have enough data on what actually was going on. And as we did more testing, that kind of led us down the road of more testing, getting connected to more specialists slowly over time. We slowly started to peel back the onion on this potential diagnosis. And after going to a series of doctors, we went to dermatologists, we went to nephrology, we went to cardiology, we went to urology, we went to, neuros and so many other people to kind of help us understand, like, where are these seizures coming from? What's causing them? Is there something else we need to understand about his body? And what we slowly started to figure out was not only was he having these seizures kind of here and there, but he also was starting to kind of create these growths on his skin that we didn't really know what they were either, right? Our dermatologist also kind of had said, we don't know what these are. We don't know how to identify them. Here are other specialists, other people you can go and see. And we couldn't put pieces together. And finally, we got referred to a specialist in the TSC clinic, which I'll talk about our son's disorder in a second. We got referred to a specialist there. And that's when they started to identify that what he was managing was potentially TSC, and TSC stands for Tuberous Sclerosis Complex. And after a variety of tests, a lot more exploration, we kind of slowly got to the point of a definitive diagnosis just last year. So it was over an 8-year journey of trying to figure out, like, we have these little puzzle pieces, but we aren't putting the whole puzzle together. What does this mean? What does that mean? Having to find specialists that really understood the TSC diagnosis was really challenging. And once we got to a definitive diagnosis, it's been a lot better for us, but it was really a lonely and isolating and hard journey because we didn't have the full picture and we didn't really fully understand the support that my son needed, both behaviorally and on the social emotional side, but more importantly, like his body and his genetic makeup and how he actually functions and what we were dealing with kind of from the inside out for him and his health. So it's been a long journey of trying to kind of figure out where he is and what he needs, but we have definitively kind of landed on this disorder and this diagnosis. And it's been able to open up a lot of doors for us, but it also has felt at the same time like this added level of isolation and emotion that we're trying to manage. So in a nutshell, that's kind of our story. And, navigating motherhood with a family that's large and 3 other kids alongside, a medically complex kid. And, what that's meant for us mentally and emotionally as a family, how we've had to really come together in a variety of different ways to support one another. And we've had to get really uncomfortable in some seasons, asking for help and reaching out to community and reaching out to friends and building more of a network because it's felt so hard in certain seasons. So that's kind of a little bit about us, Katie.
Well, thank you for sharing so much. I have so many questions that are
Yeah.
circulating in my brain, but is this a quote unquote typical diagnosis story for TSC now that you're a year into the community? Because I just think back, I'm like, I wish you would have had those 8 years of other parents who could
Yeah.
pick you up and help you understand. But is this kind of a typical diagnosis story for that?
I would say no. I would say more often than not, there are more significant symptoms or things that kind of pop up in the beginning or the earlier points of a child's life. Oftentimes with TSC, you start to see the growths, which we could talk about. You start to see the growths on the heart and the brain and the kidneys earlier on in your life. And that wasn't really Brendan's story. Like all of that has kind of come along later. And so, that's such a great question. And what I've learned more than anything specific to TSC, just like any diagnosis and disorder, everyone is so unique. Like it's highly bio-individual. And so your path will be different from another person's path. And, if I knew what I know now, then, I probably would have figured out ways to ask different questions, or I would have challenged, the medical conversations we were having a little bit more, but I just really didn't know. And, I think from the people that I've started to connect with inside the TSC community, that's one of the things that they've also shared, because everybody's diagnosis is so different. And it is a very rare genetic disorder that, some specialists or a lot of specialists don't even necessarily have the knowledge of what it is. So they don't necessarily know what to look for or what to, think of as a potential thing that you need to research or look into. And so that was kind of what we were experiencing with practitioners and doctors and even specialists we were going to. People didn't have the expertise or the knowledge around this because oftentimes it just comes down to scope of practice. And that's just, made it a little bit more of a road for us to figure it out on our own. But that's a great question, Katie. I think it's really dependent on each individual diagnosis because it's so individual. But from what I've learned, a drawn out road kind of like ours is not necessarily how it typically goes.
And it's even more of an impact on stories like yours to spread awareness, say the words TSC, what it means, what it looks like, what it can look like for someone else, and that there are different paths so that parents who are listening can now get insight from other parents who have walked through it. We've heard it on the podcast before, and I've talked with providers that say, the parents bring me this information, and then it actually helps me go understand more and talk to my colleagues.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're this way, but I'm such an advocate for being really, really picky and choosy when you're finding the care team to care for your son and to care for your kids, because you want the doctor who wants you to bring questions and you want the doctor who wants you to bring ideas and gut feelings, because they're going to be the ones that help find you the answer. And I don't know if that has been your experience at all.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say, we've had doctors that have fallen more into that camp over others. But doctors that really do have that sense of gut instinct or really can kind of point you on the direction of what they really feel like could potentially be going on and help you kind of dig and ask more of those, more inquisitive questions, et cetera. Like that's been really game changing for us and what we've needed. I'm most grateful because as we've uncovered this specific diagnosis and disorder, we've found that there is actually a TSC clinic here in our children's hospital in Utah. And that is not something that's a common either around the US. And we would have never been exposed to this kind of support or clinic where you have all the specialists in one specific appointment had we not figured out how to get down the path to a diagnosis. And, I'm just so grateful that we were able to kind of continue to connect to doctors that had some level of the knowledge and some level of the gut instinct to want to dive deeper and figure out all the puzzle pieces, because it's what really ultimately led us to the support that we have now. And, it's been transformative for our family.
Tell me a little bit about your journey in coping, because I'm sure you've had your ups and your downs. And I feel so grateful to be able to talk with parents at kind of this stage of your journey. And not that everything's easy, but you do have an answer.
Yeah.
Looking back over the past 8 years, how did you cope at the beginning, and how are you coping now? And what are some of the things you do to honestly stay awake?
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot to manage,
Yeah.
to organize, to take care of yourself. What does that look like?
It's such a great question. And, just to give a snapshot of Brendan's disorder, like I said, it's called Tuberous Sclerosis Complex. It is a disorder where the body kind of spontaneously creates these benign tumors or growths in major organs like the brain, the liver, the kidneys, the heart. It's typically on the skin and eyes as well. And so it's very complex in the sense of there's a lot of interventions we have to do. There's a lot of check-ins we have to do, a lot of appointments, a lot of specialists, things like that. And so as we've slowly uncovered all the pieces, that's been an interesting thing for me as a mom to kind of figure out how to manage and figure out how to cope with, because oftentimes I find myself kind of absorbing what it is that he's managing in his life. And I want to continue to figure out ways to take away his pain and take away the hardship and take away the adversity that he feels with having to, go to so many doctors and go to so many appointments and have all of these different interventions. And for me, I've had to really learn the importance of speaking through that rather than feeling like I have to just carry it and hold it in and be strong, because that I found over time that wasn't really serving me. And what I mean by that is it just led to this like mental and emotional burden that I couldn't carry. And it would show up in my life in ways that I was not proud of, right? Like just super burned out, really challenging, like actually trying to parent my kids and show up as a present mom. And I just felt so unglued and uncertain of how to really figure out how to manage all that he was experiencing, but at the same time, everything that I was experiencing alongside learning the levels of this disorder, because it is very complex. The other thing that we've had to unpack is how the complexity comes with other levels of disorders or disabilities. So he's also an autistic kid, and he also has epilepsy. And so one of the things we've also been managing is ever since he had seizures again, starting on the morning of his 8th birthday, they haven't really stopped. Like we haven't had seizure control in over 3 years, and he still has seizures most often during the night when he sleeps. And so that has been a very interesting dynamic for our family, because we can't let him sleep alone right now. Like that's a pretty tough dynamic for our marriage, and also for just our family and for him as an 11-year-old boy as he's growing older. And so that has also given me another layer of trying to figure out, how do I cope with the reality of what we're really trying to manage? And how do I keep working through my own mental and emotional weight versus his mental and emotional weight as he grows older? And so really, Katie, the most profound things for me have been finding help and support. So I go to therapy very consistently. I'm very open with friends and family that I feel very close to and safe with. And I talk to them very honestly about the hardship that we're managing and the reality of our situation, and how we really just need people to check in on us, right? Like be there to be a support, like be there to just talk through things, right? I've also slowly started to get connected to more like-minded or groups that are also managing TSC. So I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with other moms, and I've also chatted with other moms who are, navigating different parts of the diagnosis and the disorder. They're at different seasons than we are. And that's been kind of therapeutic for me to kind of guide moms through, like, here are maybe the questions you want to think about, or if you're going in for this procedure or this test, here are the things to expect, or here are the ways that you can make it feel a little bit easier, right? And so that's also been therapeutic for me to kind of also give back in a way and talk to other moms or parents that are trying to navigate, the 24-hour EEGs, or the being at home for 3 days EEGs, or whatever it is that they're navigating in the diagnosis. Like that's been therapeutic for me too. So I would say, it hasn't been easy or pretty. I honestly had a meltdown last night
Yeah.
about everything, right? Like the meltdowns don't end. And I want to kind of normalize that because there's just a
Thank
lot
you.
of mental and emotional weight that we will forever carry.
Yeah.
And for me right now, when I think about coping and I think about what I need in order to cope as effectively as possible, a lot of it comes down to really speaking and normalizing how I feel mentally and emotionally, like
Mm.
really speaking through what it actually feels like to have a child with a medically complex disorder and how that shows up in our day-to-day life. And then making sure that I'm constantly really touching base with myself and asking, like, what do I truly need to show up as a present mom and to be the parent that I need to be for my son, but also all my kids. And so much of that comes down to self-care, taking
Mm.
time for myself, making sure that I'm fueling for energy, making sure that I'm getting quality sleep as much as I can, even in the situation that we have with my son's seizures at night, right? And stress management is a huge one. And a lot of that comes into the self-care practices. But for me, it's been, I have to talk about this. Like I have to
Yeah.
externally process. Like that
Yes.
is what I've had to learn. Because in the beginning, when it was all unknown, but even in the beginning of the diagnosis, like I just felt really scared and timid around how do I really start to speak through this and who can I really reach out to where I feel safe and understood. And I've kind of learned through more and more vulnerability that it's helping me cope by being more honest and by continuing to talk about the reality of our situation and hopefully, relating with other people and helping them really see the value of speaking through that.
It seems like it takes a lot of discipline. Like, I can imagine when I'm going through something that's difficult, my instinct is to retract and retreat and just keep it inside.
Yeah.
But the more you talk about it, the less it weighs, like
Yep.
the more light it is. I'm reading right now The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck,
Yeah.
and she talks about how for a year she was completely honest and
Yeah.
honest with herself and honest with others. And that meant when somebody asked, "How are you?" she'd say, "I'm not well.
Yeah.
I'm not faking it anymore." And it can be easier in our mind to hide how we're feeling because we don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable or they won't get it. But we're doing a disservice to ourselves when we
Yeah.
don't hold that integrity and that honesty. And it sounds like that's kind of a lot of what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've really started to try to lean into that more. And there was a season when I just felt really scared to do that,
Yeah.
right? I felt really unsure how it would necessarily be received. But I've had to learn over time that I can't be as focused on how it would maybe be received and more focused on what do we really truly need as a family in order to cope and manage what we're dealing with. But more than that, like, what do we need to do as a family in order to share, in order to make more connections, right? In order to get into that place of really vulnerable, honest relationships. And I would say that's probably been the most transformative for me and our family because the more I get into that place of sharing and being real and raw and honest, the more I'm able to build more authentic relationships. And,
Mm.
Brene Brown is one of my favorites. I absolutely love her as someone in personal development and who cares so much about mindset and wellness and really connecting with other people. And she shares all the time about how vulnerability is really the thing that connects us. And it
Mm.
really reminds us of our humanness. And it really helps people kind of break down the walls that we sometimes experience when we're managing things in life that feel really hard. And the more I speak about this in the work I do as a coach, but the more I also speak about it in our family and in my community, I'm realizing that that is really a gift for all of us when we
Yeah.
really can just be real and honest about how hard diagnoses and life and things so much more than that can be.
I had my daughter's birthday party on Saturday night, which was so fun. Also, one of the hardest things, and I
Yeah,
have anxiety. And so, like, the idea of 14 girls being at my house, and it's just a lot.
it's a lot.
The same day, my son breaks his arm
Oh my
2 hours
gosh.
before the party begins. And so the next day, I take my daughter to another birthday party, and I had a mom go, "So, how was it? Was it the best day?" And I was like, "It was one of the hardest days, you know?" And
Yeah,
sometimes I met with like this blank stare of like, "Oh, I didn't think we were going to talk honestly right now."
yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah,
And it takes a lot of guts and a lot of strength to be honest. And I so when you immediately said that you had a meltdown last night, it not only made me go, "Oh, okay, good. We're all normal," right?
Yeah.
We're all normal. We're having this, and yours are so warranted and understandable. Tell me some of your favorite parts about being Brendan's mom and what
Ooh,
you
that's
love about it.
such a great question. Brendan has made me a better person in so many ways. And he's taught me a lot about the importance of really deep rooted, like open mindedness and
Mm,
thinking about the world in a very different way.
yeah,
He's one of the most inquisitive people I know. He asks all the questions. He wants to know how everything works, how everything's made. He wants to know like the deep pieces of how things function from everything, like how a house is built to how a car is made to how our bodies function as people. Like he's so inquisitive and he thinks
yeah,
about things in this very constructive way, which has helped me really think through life in a whole new capacity.
absolutely.
He's taught me a lot about thinking outside the box. And, it's interesting because there's been seasons where he's had very, very rigid thinking. And then there's been seasons where he's had like really expansive, more open minded thinking. And he's taught me again a lot about how you really can shift how you're looking at things, how you're accepting things, how you're, creating things just by kind of going in and looking at it more and asking, tougher questions and really thinking about how you want to learn about something, right? I love his creative mind. His creativity blows me away. And it makes me feel so special to be a part of experiencing that every day because
Yeah.
it's just next level. Like he creates things and uses an imagination like nobody else I've ever met. And it just gives this incredible gift to life that I don't know everyone gets to experience the way we do. And because of the ways that he has not only, made me into a better person, he's also grown me and challenged me and made me really figure out like what are the things that I want to continue to work on and be better at and improve upon as a mom and as a woman in the world who, is incredibly passionate about health and mental health and giving back to my family, but also to my community and so much more. He challenges me in such incredible ways to really make sure that I'm thinking things through and really being considerate in so many different capacities of my life. And that's been a gift too. So there's a lot I could say, but I'm
I
so
love that.
grateful.
I feel like
Yeah.
I'm getting such a beautiful picture and glimpse of what he brings, and thank you for sharing it with us because now
Yeah.
we get a tiny piece of what Brendan offers and brings to the world. I'd love to touch on a little bit because you are a mom of 4
Mhm.
and there's a lot of managing just schedules and organization and
Yeah.
so much that goes on. And maybe balance isn't even the word because I don't know that we're ever all truly balanced, but
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about how you organize your thoughts and your time with having 4 kids.
It's a great question. So in my coaching work, I always talk about mastering the art of imperfect balance because I don't
Ah.
I don't believe in balance, right? Like
Yeah,
balance is never going to be the goal because it's just not possible.
yeah,
And I've learned that especially as a mom of a medically complex kiddo, but also a mom of 4. And I also am an entrepreneur and, I'm a wife and a friend and all the things. And so there's a lot that, I want to show up for. And I know parents everywhere can relate to that. Like there's a lot that we want to show up for, need to show up for, et cetera. And so for me, I kind of use a couple different things for organization. First is I use a lot of different trackers and calendars and things like that really does work for me personally. I use a combination of both hard copy things that I can write on and a digital calendar, right? So our family like lives and breathes in our Google Calendar. It's a shared calendar between my husband and I. We share all the things on there. And that's where we're always constantly looking at what everybody has week to week and also color coding people by who they are and what activity they have in order to really see, what's going on with each person in our family throughout the week. And beyond that, like where is the white space in our week as well, right?
mm,
Like that is one of the biggest things I've learned personally related to organization and really understanding what we have to manage is also assessing how much downtime do we have too, right? How much white space
yeah,
do we have? Because without that, I've learned I cannot function. Like I cannot keep going forward and I cannot stay on top of our schedule and be organized if I have every hour of every day booked and there's no opportunity for rebooting and self-care and, just sitting and being and existing versus doing all the time. So I would say that's one of the most profound things I've learned through using calendars, living in our Google shared calendar. I have a calendar, hard copy calendar on my desk. I have some dry erase calendars in our kitchen. I use a couple different places to cross-check activities, but then I'm also, like I said, really making sure that we have levels of regrouping time with not a whole lot continually scheduled out.
Yeah.
I think that's really the biggest things that I've used for organization. And, as I've done that, like my kids have also started to be appreciative of it. My Brendan loves it too, because he can see like what's scheduled out for our week or what are our activities at. And they can see that on the dry erase calendars or like what meals are planned. Like our kids love to see like, what are we actually eating in the house this week? Like, do we like it or do we not like it? And so we always have,
You're like, your opinion is welcome.
right. Right. And so, we're always trying to kind of have those things written down and as visible as possible for everyone to see. So it's not only falling on me, right? So that's a big
I
one.
love that. I was just about
Yeah.
to say, because there's so much in your brain,
Yeah.
and putting it out there does hold other people accountable for being
Yeah.
a part of it too.
Totally. And that's been a big one for us. And, as my kids get older, I start to lean on them more to really understand like, okay, it's Wednesday. What's going on today? What are we doing after school? Who's going where? And, as we get into a rhythm, they start to get into habits and patterns, but they're also building a little bit more awareness by actually being a part of seeing what we're planning and how we're organizing and looking at the calendars too. So I love that you touched on that point, Katie, because that's been a big one for us for sure.
Yeah, it,
Yeah.
it can be hard to something I've observed in my work and talking with families is the added maybe pressure you feel siblings can have when
Yeah.
they already have more than other families on the street to
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah.
My friend Jamie tells the funniest story about how she grew up with a cardiac defect and she was HIV positive after
Yeah.
a bad surgery where she got a bad bag of blood.
Wow.
And she never had to take out the trash. She Her siblings always had to take out the trash, and she was like, "And I was the perfect princess, and I never had to take out the trash." And her sisters still talk with her about it.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was just a funny anecdote or story to the division of labor between siblings when one is medically complex,
Yeah.
and that it is okay to give responsibility to every single member of the family for what
Yep.
they can. She certainly could have learned to take out the
Yeah.
trash, but she likes sitting on the couch. I don't know if you've found anything with that or can speak to that at all.
As far as different responsibilities and chores,
Yeah.
I would say I would say for the most part, we're really dividing as much as we can. I mean, my oldest is 13, Brendan is 11, and then my little ones are 5 and 7. And so we try to kind of figure out, okay, what feels like it's going to be more or less age appropriate for what they can manage right now. But a lot of it is really trying to work as a team. Like we've learned to work as a team because that's really where we can thrive the most. And, so much of what Brendan manages, our kiddos, our other three, have learned to really, kind of help and support around. Right. So this specific piece for Brendan, like he doesn't have any physical disabilities or anything that prevents him from, being a part of doing some of those things around the house. But I would say sometimes the mental and emotional components, the behavioral components, like that
Yeah.
can be tricky to manage when it comes to, dividing and conquering in the house or figuring out who's doing what chores or trying to figure out different responsibilities. Like sometimes it takes an extra level of coaching and parenting and helping support him to get to the point of, getting through the steps needed to, execute on something like that. And the other kids have started to help us figure out how can we support him when those actual moments feel really hard. And vice versa, Brendan's started to learn, like when he sees another one of our kids have a hard time, like he's also stepping in and trying to help them kind of navigate. If it feels
Oh,
hard for them, what can we talk through as a team, right? How can we like normalize that sometimes things feel hard or we don't want to do it or we don't know how to do it? Like, how do we work together to talk through it a little bit and normalize that feeling, whatever you're feeling is okay. We just have to figure out how do we move through it and how do we continue to press forward towards whatever it is you're trying to do or learn. So that's something that I would say is very imperfect in our house.
Yeah.
But the reality of like what we're trying to do when we're thinking about, managing the home or splitting up chores, how do we
Absolutely.
really, help each other, talk with each other, manage some of the behavioral stuff that can come along with that.
You're
Yeah.
such an amazing mom, and you're just modeling and teaching these lessons of contribution, collaboration, and understanding.
Yeah.
And, nobody is ever going to get it right.
No,
And even for kids without a medical illness, it's you're going to have all of these different things, and it's going to work for a period of time. It's not going to work anymore. You're going to have to change and adapt. But
totally.
that's why I appreciate you getting into kind of these nitty-gritty details about how you do it, because you could spark something else for another parent.
Yeah.
Say, "Oh, let's try it this way."
Yeah. Yeah. I would say if I was going to maybe call to attention a system in our house that I love is our laundry system. The kids actually love
Oh,
it and it really works very well,
okay,
especially
I'm writing this
for
down, whatever you're about to say.
especially for Brendan. Like Brendan loves a schedule. He loves, anticipating a task, going from A to Z. He loves to know exactly what the process is. And so what we've done, like in the beginning, I had maybe one or two laundry baskets in our house. Everyone threw everything into them and it became this huge mountain and everything was mixed together. And it just felt so complicated and overwhelming. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like laundry always feels that way,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah,
always
yeah.
feels that way to a degree. But the system that we've created has helped the kids take on a little bit more responsibility, but it's also made it a little bit easier for me and my husband, who are actually washing and folding and trying to put laundry back. So everyone has their own little individual laundry basket in their room. And so all of their own clothes go in their own basket. And then when it's full, they bring it up to the top of the stairs. They know that's where it goes when it's full. And then I do the loads of laundry, like just their clothes in their buckets, right? Because that helps from not being so mixed up. Like I was finding that was really challenging for me, but also just made it feel 100 times more chaotic than it already is. And so then when the laundry is done, it just goes back in their individual basket and then they find it at the top of the stairs and they take it back down and put their laundry away most often. I mean, the little kids need a lot of reminders, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Brendan and our oldest have started to figure out like that's kind of the sequence in the system. And I would say even little systems like that, where you can figure out what could I do to like give my child a little bit more responsibility and then make it a simplified system that they can learn. Like that can also help a
Mm.
lot with organization and just the overall mental load that you're managing in your home. And, there's an added layer when you have medical complexity and other things that you're trying to manage. And so, stuff like that has also been pretty profound for us. And as I said, it's always messy. It's always imperfect. Some weeks are
1000%.
way better than others,
Yeah.
but I had to figure out how to try those things in order to help myself feel a little bit more organized and feel a little bit more like I can offload some of this to them so they can also help and play a role in contribution, like you said, collaboration, contribution, and being part of the team. And that's been pretty big for us.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so helpful to hear these little things. And what it does is also maybe allows a little bit more for that white space that you were talking about,
Yeah.
that downtime, that like mental space that you can take if you're not worrying about how much there is to do, because there are so many things to do.
Right. Right.
Well, you
Totally.
mentioned that you're an entrepreneur. I would love to hear a little bit about what you do and how you help people.
So right now I'm a women's health coach and I kind of landed in this space because of my own journey in health and midlife health specifically. And, really learning about my evolving needs as my body has aged over time. But I would say like a lot of what I've really focused on for a long time is more of the mental and emotional side to wellness. So I studied social work and psychology. I worked in corporate human resources for 5 years. And then once we started to have kids, I decided to stay home and kind of moved more into the health arena. But I've always been a big believer in really starting to understand like your inside out health needs and what does that look like? And how do we start to really embrace how the body works as a full system? Because it's not just how we move. It's not just how we fuel for energy. It's not just how we stress manage. It really is the whole puzzle. And that's really what I coach women through and really start to teach women and families about, is how do we start to embrace this idea of healthy living from this scope of knowledge of it's all intertwined, and we have to be paying attention to all of the different pieces. And so, I work a lot in the women's health space right now. Like I said, kind of in the midlife health sector. I focus a lot on hormone health and how do we really maximize our efforts for longevity, for energy, for vitality. What does that look like? And how can we start to pass on these very tangible tips and tricks and ideas to our families, to our kids? I speak to women all the time who are burned out, who are tired, who are exhausted by some of the narratives that can come across inside health and wellness. And I think when you get to a certain point in your life, especially if you're, managing medical disorders, et cetera, like your perspective changes about so many different things. And I think when you can really embrace how important it is to take care of your own wellness while you're managing all of the things around you, like it just changes how you're able to show up for your life, and more importantly, how you feel in your life. And that's what I coach women through, is I want women to feel optimized and energized, and like they can really, focus in on themselves while they're also focusing in on their families. And so that's kind of where I'm at in a nutshell with coaching.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What a gift you are.
I appreciate that.
I, of course, I'm a middle-aged woman who's
Yeah.
kind of navigating through the whole thing, and it makes me so grateful to get to have this time with you. I can see the impact you have one-on-one. It's, we're kind of served all this stuff, at least I am on my algorithm
Yeah.
on
All
social
the
media,
time.
right? And it's amazing to get to meet the women behind this incredible work that you're doing. And I can imagine there are probably many moms or people who are listening who would love to hear more about how to work with you, and how would
Yeah.
someone do that?
Best thing to do is just go to my website. It's erintrier.com. I have a freebie on there that just has some basic tips on what are things you can focus on in your day-to-day to really optimize your energy and to feel really good. So just some basic habits and some things that I believe really will serve you best, especially in midlife health. And that's where you can go on. You can set up a free coaching call session at any point in time. I would love to hear your story and connect and just hear more about, what your health journey has been like and where you feel like you can need more support. And like you said, Katie, I think, the wellness space is a very loud, noisy place. And especially inside women's health, the narratives can feel very hard, very loud, very confusing. And my role and my passion is really to cut through the noise and to change the narrative for women, to really help you get to the core of what's going to serve your longevity the best. Like that is what I want for you. That is what I want for your family. And I want women to know that it is possible to get to a place of feeling really good in your skin and feeling really energized, and getting to that focus of like focusing on, how can you have a long, happy life for your kids and your family and so much more.
That's amazing. And it's Erin, Trier,
Yep.
correct? And then Erin is spelled Erin.
Yep. That's
Awesome.
right.
We're getting it right.
erintrier.com. That's right.
And then that's also what you are on social media, correct?
On social media, I'm Erin K. Trier at Instagram. So I do have my middle initial in my Instagram. I had to switch up my Instagram a couple years ago. So it's Erin K. Trier on Instagram. I also have a podcast called Empowered in Health, and you can find that on Instagram too. But like I said, I would love to connect on anything related to our family story, our son's diagnosis, Inside Out Health, whatever anyone wants to chat about. I'm always open ears and would love to hear your story.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so, so much for your time today and giving me some of your white space that you have. I hope that you're able to go and take care of yourself after this. It's a lot, and it can be heavy to relive some of the things that you've been through and really kind of put it all out there.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for your honesty, your vulnerability, and for sharing. And let's continue to spread awareness about TSC. I'm going to let you say it.
Yeah. TSC, Tuberous Sclerosis Complex.
Perfect.
And it's part of Mental Health Awareness Month. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and TSC has a Mental Health Awareness Month and an actual Mental Health Awareness Day. So you can actually go on and look all kinds of stuff up. This month is a special month for us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Katie, for the opportunity. I just feel really grateful to share our family story and just to normalize the mental and emotional component to managing a diagnosis, because it is a lot and it has a very profound effect on our health as women, as moms, as parents. and our children. And so I'm a firm believer in just really continuing to figure out, how can I speak through this? How can I be honest about how I'm feeling? How can I find the support? And how can I implement the tools that I know are going to help me be my best day in and day out?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie.
As a parent, you want to be there for your child, especially when it comes to their health. But healthcare can be overwhelming and confusing. The good news is child life specialists are experts who help families navigate these challenges. But often our support is only in hospitals. So imagine if you had access to these valuable tools and resources all the time. You would be able to understand medical procedures, explain them to your child, and help them feel less anxious, which also makes you probably feel less anxious. So when your child visits the doctor, has surgery, or has a medical procedure, having the right information and support can make all the difference. You, the parent, can be prepared to answer their questions, calm their fears, and advocate for their needs. Child Life Specialist tools are ready to be in your hands right now through our app Support Spot. All you have to do is go to the iOS or Android store, type in Support Spot. We are giving all of our listeners on this podcast access to the app for just $19.99 for an entire year. You are going to have, I'm not kidding, 7 years worth of resources and support and information that we have been building at Child Life on Call at your fingertips. With these tools in your pocket, you can transform the way your family experiences medical care. Parents, you deserve to be informed and feel confident in your child's healthcare journey. And by having access to Support Spot, you can ensure that your child feels supported and understood no matter what medical challenges come your way. Head to the link in the show notes or go to your app store, type in Support Spot to download it today. For those of you who are joining us today, I am not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I am a child life specialist. And the suggestions and tips and resources that I talk about with parents on this podcast may be great for you and they may not be right for you. So the most important person you can talk to about getting support is your care team, your doctor who knows your story and your child's story. So regardless of maybe what I mention or what other families mention here, we're not licensed therapists, we're not doctors. We're having a conversation about what the parenting journey has been like. So please keep that in mind as you listen today.